Is NIL good for collegiate sports? That's the question I'm going to try to figure out today, because it's a very complicated and confusing answer, and it almost feels like as if there's not an answer at all, because both sides of there's no really a good gray area where you're going to be able to make both sides happy, and that's really never the case. But there is a problem with college sports right now, that being that there's not a governing body other than the NCAA. There's not an NCAA-PA. It's not an NFL and NFLPA. You're also dealing with 120 schools versus the 32. And I know I'm just talking about college football right now. And you have NBA and you have NHL and all these other sports and the WNBA. And it's not just collegiate sports. It's every sport for 120 teams. It's an almost infinite number of possibilities. But specifically with college football, what we're witnessing is an extreme amount of player movement, and I'm all for it. There's nothing wrong with player movement. What we have noticed is, ever since allowing this rule to happen, where players have a one-time transfer rule where they can transfer once and be able to instantly play without having to wait for a year of eligibility, and now every player, if something goes south, and it's great for the sport on paper, when you take the money out of things. And when you take the money out of things, you get so much player movement because coaches can move for more money. Why can't the players? And that's something I want to support. But then you have Eastern Michigan offering $1 million for Caleb Williams, and there's just absolute wild west things going on where it's not out in the open, but it's kind of, you get rumors and you get sources. People are accusing Texas A&M, for example, for spending $4 to $5 million, I think, per 5-star just off of boosters. And I'm here to tell everyone, and I'm just the messenger here. Calm down. This is good for the sport. In my opinion, in my humble heart, I think this is a good thing for the sport and college football overall. Because we have just witnessed Jackson State University pulling the number one player in all of college football. We've also noticed that they've gotten a 4-star receiver who is super talented, number one player out of Missouri. And there's rumors, Barstool has an NIL deal for Travis Hunter and crew and many others. But we are witnessing a lot of teams. A&M has the number one class. So what? We've been dealing with Georgia and Alabama, and for things to change, you need... And a lot of people are having problems with parity and the fact that, it's always Alabama, it's always Clemson, it's always these top programs, and recruiting starts there. Why wouldn't people be excited that these non-top programs per se, or these blue bloods, are getting these recruits? And it's always been like that. Blue bloods always get these recruits. And that's why I feel that my hottest take for this video is going to be that I believe that a super conference isn't the worst thing for NCAA football. Now, a super conference is a very tough concept, not in definition, but in actual practice. It's a very tough thing to actually pull off, because you're picking and choosing between 120 schools to put into a 30-team league, and you're saying, all right, we're picking these 3. That's why a lot of people believe that Power 5 is going to split off between everyone else, and I think that might be the best option if all Power 5 conferences move off and go to their separate ways. That being because now you are moving away from the NCAA, who is a very outdated organization of people that make very outdated decisions and very anti-player movement and anti-player rights decisions. It took them forever to allow for the NIL thing, let alone the transfer rule, which both were things that needed to change immediately. And now you set a cap on potential NIL deals, which is something that people are feeling that needs to happen. I don't know if it's that necessary. You almost allow for a free agency. It gets players better acclimated for the NFL potentially, and I think maybe it sources a lot of the talent, because there's only so many players that can go to so many leagues, and the problem is what do you do with the rest of the Power 5 outside of the Power 5? There's a lot of things to consider when it comes to talking about NIL, because right now you have Caleb Williams getting offered $1 million to go play for Eastern Michigan, and his is one of the most interesting. It's going to most likely come down to coaching. I think he's going to end up at USC. Quinn Ewers got $1 million from Ohio State to go play a couple snaps, and now he's back at Texas where he most likely was always going to be at. Not to mention you have high school players having a $800K value in Evan Stewart coming out of college, being that's his value via NIL, which I don't know what On3 is basing that all off of, because I feel like those numbers are much higher than what they're actually projected. But there's a whole list of like the top most, like, I think the best way you could put it is market value or marketable players, because you have CJ Stroud, you have Bryce Young. Bryce Young apparently got like roughly $1 million coming straight into college, and it's really cool to see all these brands get these different deals for these different athletes. But what's really going to be interesting is probably this year and moving on, it's going to be way different, because unlike previous years, you had a lot of these players who had already committed before NIL was really a massive deal. I mean, Bo Nix was, I think, a senior this year, and he got, Bojangles of some kind sponsoring him. Like, he was already at Auburn, and then he got the opportunity to sign these sponsors. It'll be interesting to see when recruiting pitches are using NIL, which there obviously are. We're watching Texas right now offering $80,000 openly in the Pancake Factory, I believe that's the name of it, to go get offensive linemen to go play for Texas, and they have just pulled Kelvin Banks an OT, and they could get Devon Campbell, the number one interior offensive lineman. It's obviously working. Now, obviously, Texas is Texas. You got to also coincide the brand and what the momentum of the team is, but it's all about weighing how much the money is involved. You have recruits saying it doesn't matter, and then that Texas's only pitch, and Kobe McKinsley, a former Texas commit that flipped back. Originally, actually, he went from Oklahoma to Texas back to Oklahoma, and he said on his final flip that Texas was only offering money, and that's basically their entire pitch. I mean, these are all different things you have to take into account. And this is why it's so hard to talk about, because at the end of the day, you don't want to take money from these kids because they've earned it. Obviously, if people are going to offer it to them, and they deserve to take that money and not be punished for it, because, I mean, coaches move freely in college football all the time, and they'll do it right before bowl games and just ditch these kids who have devoted and committed their lives to this program, and it's clear that the coach wasn't committed at all. And so I'm not going to be one that says, hey, we need to not let these kids make money at all and make it all about the sport, because it's never going to be like that. And it never was like that before NIL. It was just illegal. Even Jimbo Fisher admitted it on live TV that NIL has been happening for years now. It's illegal. Now you're just kind of letting it be out in the open, and the public is not really perceiving it as well and kind of taking it very negatively. And I am one to support NIL. I think it's a great thing for the sport. Let the kids make money, damn it. Like, you're not going to restrict a kid from, like, I have a job right now. I'm making money, and it's not great. It's not $80,000 a year, but he is a athlete who's going to go make money in the NFL one day, and he's devoted his entire life to this. Why should he get burned in college because he tore his ACL twice, and now he has to re-scramble and figure out his entire life? That is a terrible thing to do, and it's what they used to do. They used to punish kids for trying to have a backup plan and try to survive now, because they don't have money coming into college. They have to pray that they don't get injured and make it to the NFL, and even then making it to the NFL is a super tough thing to do. Like, to take money from these kids is a terrible idea. I've seen a lot of people promote it and say, get rid of NIL, go back to what it used to be. And what it used to be was illegal, putting it under the table and no one could see. That's what it was. Don't act like it's not true. Don't act like it's never happened. The only way you get caught is if the NCAA starts to investigate. If you stay quiet and you don't show off those McDonald's bags, Tennessee, then you're going to be okay. But now you can be a little more open about it. And so what? Because it's not like these companies are getting guaranteed money makers. I mean, they're not getting guaranteed production out of them. Like, not every 5-star is going to work out. I hate to say it. A lot of number one players out of the country don't have a fantastic career. It doesn't always happen like that. Now, sometimes you get Hall of Famers, and great for Nike sponsoring this guy when he was in college, and now you have him for the NFL, and he has a great career. But guess what? At the same time, there's the same opportunity that he gets given $3 million in high school and college, and he funks out in the NFL, and that there goes $3 million. These are investments in a lot of these kids, and so what? And there's a lot of risk with this NIL, but I truly do support it, and I think that it's what's best for the sport. And yes, it's the wild, wild west with college football, but I do think there's some bigger changes coming soon. And it's hard to say you want to put a cap limit on this or a limit on how much these kids are making, but it's just not practical. You have 120 schools. You have plenty of other sports who are offering the same thing. You can't put a limit on this because of the mass grouping of people and students and everything. And these aren't professional leagues. This is amateurs. And I love the chaos of it because it's all about player empowerment and letting them make their own decisions at the end of the day and not being forced to go one way or the other. And that's the truth of it. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. What do you think about NIL and how it's affecting your favorite team? And really, where do you think the NCAA is going to take this? And do you think potentially a super conference could come out of this? Thank you so much.